Hello, my name is Casper. I have been a cargo bike user for 4 or 5 years now, and since we make cargo bikes, we hear quite a lot of questions from people who are very new to cargo bikes, and the main question from those crowds seem to be whether one should be considering a two-wheeler or a three-wheeled cargo bike. So last week I rented one of a three-wheel bikes and put it to test in real life, and I found some things that were quite obvious and got confirmed, and some things that I expected were not true, and I also found out some new things using Bike Daily. The two bikes that I tested, one is our own Hagen XL e-cargo bike with Enliolo automatic gears, belt drive, and a mid-drive motor. And the other one was Kangoo Easy, which is a three-wheel cargo bike with a rear-wheel motor and external gears. Now the key difference between the two concepts is that one has a single track and one has multi-track. So single track meaning that both of the wheels are on the same line. So when you ride, you only have basically one trajectory. If you think about three-wheel cargo bike, you have multi-track, so you have each of the three wheels carrying its own track. So basically 3 trajectories that let you move on. And that for me was actually the biggest difference as well between them two. With a three-wheel cargo bike, because of the multi-track, it's very hard to avoid all the bumps. So if there is a sewage drain, for example, then it's very hard to pass it with all 3 wheels if the road is not very wide. And if the road is unsmooth, then the whole bike gets somewhat bumpy. It's not very noticeable, but for me it brought back a back pain that I had from an injury a couple of years ago. So it was just constant, but not very harsh. The difference with the single track versus multi-track also is that with a single track you can have basically half the bike hanging over the side of the road. So either on the grass or on the other side of the curb, for example. So if you need to pass something and the road gets really narrow, then you have that extra space. The difference between the two as well, when I used the three-wheel bike, the snow was just melting. So it was very handy that on very low speeds, the multi-track bike is very stable. And the single-track bike gets more stable the faster you go. So that's also one of the key differences. Now talking about speed, because the e-bike regulation keeps the straight line speed the same for basically all the e-bikes at 25 kilometers per hour, then I was not sure what the speed difference would be, but I put this to real test as well, riding to work. It's a 2.2 kilometer ride. And with a single track bike, I did it in 6 minutes flat, and with a multi-track bike, it took me 7 minutes 15 seconds, both on a very normal pace. So actually a very surprisingly big difference, how much it changes when you're able to corner faster. Now the three-wheel bike that I used became quite unstable at speeds over 25 kilometers per hour. So if you would ride over a bump with one of the wheels, then the whole box would start shaking. I also tried out a different three-wheeler, a Christiania, which was a lot more stable. I think the Kangoo had leaked out the damper oil, so that's one of the things that I would suggest to look for as well, is a damper between a frame and the box to keep them stable if you're thinking about an electric three-wheeler. And the pain point for me, when the speed is a consideration, was the 3 kilometer mark. So if you're traveling more than 3 kilometers in a single travel, so for example, my route from work to home is under 3, so I actually wouldn't mind doing that maybe with a three-wheeler as well. But if I do need to do the kindergarten around as well, which takes my trip up to 6 kilometers, then this already got very annoying for me with a slower bike. Now, key difference also is the riding position. Generally speaking, three-wheelers tend to have a very upright position, which is very good for visibility. And also on short trips, it may be more comfortable for some. But for me, standing upright and combined with a bumpy ride of the multi-track bike, my back started hurting basically the first half an hour ride I took, and it kept going for the whole week. So I was really looking forward to getting back on the single track bike, and it proved a key difference as well. So the back pain went away straight away when I got back on the more leaning forward position and the less bumpy ride of the two-wheeled cargo bike. So conclusion time, pros and cons of both. The two-wheeler is definitely faster, it's more fun, at least for me. It's smoother, so you don't need to have perfectly smooth road in order to have a smooth ride. It's easier to maneuver because of the width, at least for me. On very slow speeds, it's the opposite. Of course, the slow speed is easier for the three-wheeler, and then high-speed stability as well. If you go fast with the two-wheeler, you're very stable, but with a three-wheeler, it can get wobbly. The cons of the two-wheeler is the low-speed stability, that there's just not so much of it. And then you have the risk of tipping over in slippery conditions. So the front wheel can be light, especially without any cargo on it, and it has less stability with heavy loads. So if you're carrying around 100 kilos at a time, then the three-wheeler will be more stable for sure. The three-wheeler has very good low-speed stability. So if you're carrying something heavy or big, or you're just going very close, and stability is a consideration for you, then you will be better off with a three-wheeler. Then you have the stability in slippery conditions. So when the snow was melting, I never had to worry about the front wheel slipping and me dipping over. What's also nice is that you don't have to put your foot down in traffic lights, so the bike stays up on its own all the time. There's no need to pull the bike on the kickstand when parking, so this can be very helpful for some businesses where, for example, a mail delivery where you need to hop on and off the bike a lot, and you have the better visibility because you're so upright. At the cons, definitely high-speed stability. You have the risk of tipping over in corners if you go fast, and the ride is a lot more bumpier. So which should you choose? Of course, there's a reason why both exist and both serve a role. So with a three-wheeler, I would suggest to choose if your single travel is up to 3 kilometers. You value low speed stability and you're okay staying at 15 to 20 kilometers per hour where the road is not smooth, or you wish to carry 100 kilos regularly, or maybe you have issues with keeping balance. And choose the two-wheeler if you value speed and agility, if you ride around with 50 to 70 kilos of loads regularly or less, and if your single travel is more than 3 kilometers, or your daily travel is over 15 to 20 kilometers, then you're probably better off with a two-wheeler as well because of the speed and the handling. Taking into consideration that I have been into bikes basically my whole life, riding road bikes, mountain bikes, BMX bikes, cargo bikes, sidecar bike, you name it, I've probably ridden it. So I'm a very active rider, and the following will be from my perspective, and definitely not representative of everyone. I went into this test very open-minded, and I was surprised and even a bit disappointed in myself that I couldn't find many things to like about the three-wheeler. One, of course, is that you don't need to put the foot down, but given how bumpy it is, how uncool this bike is, but I thought that this may probably only be that nobody else thinks that way. But when I got home, my wife said, "Oh my god, this bike looks ridiculous. It must be embarrassing riding this." So this really cemented the feeling, and it didn't really leave me. The only fun way of riding this three-wheel bike was to ride it on two wheels, but that also gets boring after a while. And it brought back the back pain for me, so it wasn't very enjoyable. The good news was that my daughter liked the bike. She didn't mind riding either of the bikes. I thought that she would be saying, "You take the fast bike," but there was no difference. And for years I've been talking my wife into getting a three-wheeler for her, but now after this test I can really feel that even she would be better off on a two-wheeler with a smaller, not as wide bike. and some sort of a smaller three-wheeler. Sorry, the smaller two-wheeler would be much better for her, easier to handle, easier to park, and less bumpy. So I know that she will actually enjoy that one quite a bit more as well. But again, especially in places where we have very smooth roads like Denmark, Netherlands, the three-wheeler has its purpose. You can carry 6 kids at a time and very heavy loads. So where the infrastructure is perfect, it suits better as well. But my only advice based on this would be that just please don't buy a bike that you won't use. So if you're planning to buy a bike for yourself, and for example in my case, if I would have been buying a bike that me and my wife would use, we would have probably bought the three-wheeler in the first place. But then it would have been a bike that she would be using rarely, and I would dislike using a lot. So just buy a bike that you know you will get the most out of, and most in many cases it does not mean that both of you use it when one of you uses it very rarely. So buy a bike that you will use daily, and you will like riding, so you will use it for whatever you can. So thanks very much for tuning in. I hope this helps some of you. Probably, like I said, it's not representative of every rider in the world, but from my viewpoint, this is my opinion. So thanks very much.